Jim Coffin, welcome to the podcast.
Good morning.
Yeah, great to have you here. This is episode number 13, and Jim, you are our first guest. So
13, I'm worried about bad luck.
It's a lucky number.
Oh.
Yes. So great to have you here, and we're going to have you talk about wisdom. But before we do that, our connection has primarily been through wrestling, and I guess by way of introducing you to those that are around here, in the order that I know Jim Coffin, I would put you as coach, explorer, philosopher, fisherman, literary, historian, friend, connoisseur of living, seeker of meaning, and champion of all. That's how I would introduce, or those are the things that are most meaningful that I've learned from Jim Coffin.
Holy smokes. That's quite a list.
Well, it's just a beginning. And, so you were a coach for Morse Wrestling for 20, 25 years?
Yeah, probably. Something like that.
Something like that. 1978, I think, was the first year?
Yeah, it might have been 77 to 78,
Okay,
I
all
think,
right.
maybe.
Yeah. I don't know if I was there the first year or the second year, but it was...
Second, I think.
Second year, okay. Yep. Yeah, and so I think probably you've coached 10 or so state champions?
I like to think quite a few more than that.
Well, I mean, in terms... first place finishers, but and then a lot of second place, third place.
Yeah.
However, that was never the goal.
It happens.
Yeah, it happens. But what I watched you do was transform the lives of a lot of kids who wrestling was something that they would, if they didn't have wrestling in their life, I don't know what they would have had in their life, especially at that time in high school.
I think that's true for a lot of kids, and I think it's not always necessarily someone like myself, but it's the sport itself. I think it brings a lot out of kids that they don't know that they have, and it's a great learning experience and opens up things, different thinking. Right.
Yeah, I talked with a couple of your old athletes, and I'm just going to read through this because it really puts things in perspective, I think. So... one said, for me personally, it was a higher level. He constantly encouraged and coached you to live. Climb mountains, go on adventures, read, tell stories, take chances. I call it Jim's way. In every story, every hard practice, every recommended book or adventure was a life lesson that we all needed. The easy and obvious things we gained in spades like grit, confidence, humility, courage, and the heart to never, ever quit are complemented by how we learn to question and think.
Yeah.
And another one who said, Jim Coffin did not have to share his books. Oh, I'm sorry. He started with this. Coach Coffin did not owe this young wrestler anything. Jim Coffin did not have to share his books, music, boat, and thoughts with me. He owed me nothing but gave everything. I am forever in his debt, but I hope I can repay it by passing on similar lessons to the young people who surround me at school. He's a teacher. Yeah. And, under your tutelage, we became good wrestlers and even better men because of what you taught us. So you're obviously a man of great impact, and thank you for that.
Well, okay.
Yes. So let's talk a little bit about your thoughts on wisdom and other things that come to mind.
Well, wisdom, I think getting back to wrestling just real quick, I think it more than most or maybe all sports, it has a huge amount to offer, much of which in the long run becomes wisdom. It's sort of instinctual. You got to react quick, just in the sports idea of it all. But I think one of the highlights about that sport is the thinking part of it. There's so many things to keep track of, so many things to learn. Even if you're not the best, you are always challenged. You got to figure things out. Sometimes you figure those things out through working with a team member or the team or the coach, but a lot of it's on your own. And I think wisdom, not wholly, but much of it has to come through yourself. So some of the ideas that I like about wisdom is, because I've used to read, and I think you might still come by this idea that wisdom is the kind of thing that can't be taught. You can't really Google it. Although maybe after this podcast, that might be a possibility. I don't know. But other ideas that I really like about it, as I said, are instinct, but it's a different kind of instinct. It's not a physical thing. Like if you put your hand and touch it on a burning wood stove and you burn your fingers, you only have to do that once. And then forever and ever and ever, you're wary of stoves. But instinct that's brain or mental is different, and it's cumulative. You can't just read a single book. You can't just have a single conversation. You got to spend time pursuing it. You gotta know where to look, and if you don't find it right off, you got to say, "Well, I'm still looking. I'm still pursuing." So I think wisdom can be had, and I think there's all kinds of different ways you can get to it. And one of the things that was real valuable to me in my life is college. And it was only a couple courses that I took that really, kind of turned on some lights for me. One was art photography, and it was like a different way of seeing things. Black and white photography and art and beauty and something you weren't familiar with. It was kind of like, whew, that's so different and so smart. The other thing that probably even more so that affected me in terms of wisdom was a course, a seminar on 5th century BC Greece, or Athens in particular. So it was a study of the Greek culture 2,500 years ago. And
is that Bowdoin? When you were at Bowdoin?
At college.
Yeah, at college.
And what sticks out to me about that is if you don't count comforts and contraptions, one writer proposes that this was the highest civilization of all time, including our own. So as we live right now, what he's saying is they lived better than we do. So I said to myself, wait a minute, how could that be? How could these people 2,500 years ago live better than you and I? I mean, it's holy smokes. So when you start to look at architecture, theater, rhetoric, democracy, navies, armies, wealth, it's like, phew, they did have a lot going for them. So part of me, as I got a little older and stuff, I said, what I really don't want to do is I don't want to miss out on life. So how do you not miss out on life? How do you know which way to go? What's your guidepost? So I'm very interested in smart living and what is that? And instead of being lured by just making money, because I think a lot of us, especially in the culture nowadays, we associate making money as far as life goes. The more money you have, the better life is. And I think particularly college kids, a lot of them go to school, they want to make a lot of money when they get out with a degree and stuff. And again, it's equating wealth and money so you can go out and do and buy, and that makes good life. But I don't think it's that way at all. And the Greeks didn't either. They like their wealth, and they try to procure it and stuff. But for them, what was real important was being the universal man, not good at one thing, not necessarily being wealthy. They liked the idea of being a jack of all trades. It was more important to be good at many things than just superb at one thing. Excellent. And so for them, it was important to, I always use the story of what they kind of liked was the idea of being in a wrestling tournament, for example, and that night celebrating by standing up and playing the flute, and the next morning going out and vote. They thought someone who didn't participate with their community and the democracy was worthless. And in our country today, a lot of us, we watch the news and we do politics and the like, but do we really, really affect and try to change and, make our country better? I don't know. Ponderous. And to back up the Greeks, another idea the Greeks had that I really like is, let's say here today,
Yes.
we all live to be 74 years old. If you live to be 74 and you multiply that times the number of days in a year, 365, it comes out to about 27,000. So you get to live about 27,000 days. And their question to you and I is, how are you going to spend those days? And my idea is, some of them, you're a baby. You're like incoherent and you're out of it. So life is finite. And I think they recognize that we're mortal. And we know that. We're probably the only creatures alive that know they're going to die. Animals, they have their instincts and their fighting and survival sense, but we know different. So you want to make good days. And again, it all comes back to not only how you live, but how you live well. Because, for me, I don't want to miss out. And I got convinced kind of early on that if you just strive for money, you're going to miss out. And there's some really good examples. Celebrities, they're famous, they got tons of money. Do they really, really live that well? I have my doubts.
Are they looking for simplicity more than all that? You got to think they are.
Well, you'd like to think so.
Yeah.
I mean, simplicity seems like the way to go.
Yeah.
And one other thing,
simplicity and anonymity to a certain extent.
Wouldn't you think they would love that? And I think some of them do, because you don't hear about them anymore. Some of them, like they do a couple of big movies, they make millions of dollars, you never hear them again.
Yeah.
So it's almost like they got smart.
Mm-hmm.
So one other instance that has very much affected me, and I first came by this guy, Henry Thoreau, in my art photography class. Even though when I grew up in a town outside of Boston, Lexington, which is right next to Concord. Concord's where he lived and where he wrote Walden Pond and did all his wandering and the like. And I have this a line by him that I'm very affected by this idea. I think it's just what the Greeks were thinking about, and I just want to read it. And this is Henry Thoreau's idea about how he wants to live, why he wants to live. And it goes like this. I went to the woods because I wished to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life, and see if I could not learn what it had to teach, and not, when I came to die, discover that I had not lived. I think that's really smart. He didn't want to miss out. He's like the Greeks. And I like to think I think like them, because I don't want to miss out. So I'm very interested I think there's a lot of truth to the variety is the spice of life. I think there's tons of things to have a quality life. I think they're very diverse. I think you got to work really hard. Getting back to great wealth and celebrities and the like, I could actually imagine and think that a lot of people who are not as well off, a lot of people who struggle, and struggle comes in many forms. And for example, we've already talked about wrestling. I think wrestling is a terrific example of struggle. A wrestler's life is struggle. I think people who struggle actually lead and live probably better lives, because there's a lot going on. You have to make decisions. You have to think. You have to use your instincts. They have a tendency to produce good things as well as bad. Anyway, I'm a big fan of the idea of wisdom. Again, it seems as though it can't be taught, but I don't completely believe that. I think you can do a lot on your own. I think there's all kinds of ways to come by it.
Because experience.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to interrupt me, because I'm monologuing, but.
Well, experience certainly plays a lot into wisdom, right? I mean,
absolutely.
Your experiences that you have through life, whether they're simple or compact, have a big impact on the wisdom that you then carry forward.
Absolutely. Yeah. And who knows what experience you're going to come by that does that or creates that. But I think the things that are easy, in a way, to help gain that experience and a sense of, at least hints of wisdom. For example, I'm a big fan of books, and even though I say all literature is good, all reading is good, I think there's a real distinction between great books. One author even says, what's really happening to our country and our civilization here in America is the failure to read good books. So I think it's nice to be picky. I tend to think that it's important to read books that have, might be a good review, might be something that someone recommends, might be the stuff you learn in high school, books you learn in high school and stuff. But I find a great wealth in books. I read a lot. I mean, a lot.
Who would be your favorite authors?
My 3 favorite books of all time, I'll just mention real quick, and they're all fiction, but I don't read much fiction, but the ones I like a lot because, and I'll get back to this broader idea about ideas. My favorite book of all time is Moby Dick. I think it's the richest, deepest, most powerful book ever written. I think it's that good.
What were the nuggets, the key nuggets or blocks that you take out of Moby Dick?
I would say I think the ultimate idea there is the white whale representing probably the unknown. It's man's idea that he wants to reach beyond whatever we can. There's a limit to how much we can know. I mean, we went to the moon and everything, but we still don't know everything. Stuff is beyond our reach, and I think the white whale represents that. Captain Ahab, the main man, he wants that knowledge. He wants that wisdom. He wants to know what's beyond. He wants to go beyond. And what the earth or God or whatever factors say, no, you can't do that.
Yeah.
And the white whale is going to prevent that. So he's after that. And there's a wonderful line in there. It's... And Moby Dick goes something like, it's that same image we all seek, the ungraspable phantom of life. So I think the power of Moby Dick is it's trying to go beyond the reach. I really like that idea.
The struggle, too.
Yeah, and it all ends up bad.
Yeah.
And it's really big on death and evil and goodness and humanity. It's loaded.
Loaded, yeah.
And it just as an aside, Herman Melville was a very good friend of Nathaniel Hawthorne, who is famous for some of his literature, very much about good and evil and what's beyond. They became good friends. They used to go on hikes together in the western mountains of Massachusetts. They take a picnic basket, sandwiches, a bottle of wine, and just the talk. Can you imagine those two guys? I mean, it's like you like to be a fly on the picnic basket.
Yeah. So that was one of the books. What were the others?
Another one I really liked is just really powerful, great characterization. Is War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy. Very long book. I've only read it once. It was translated by a woman. Her name is Anne Dunnigan. It's hard for me to believe that Leo Tolstoy could write that well but there's this translator that has this language. I said, holy, who are these people that can think like that and write like that? It's the only book that I've ever come by in my life that could actually convince me that there is something beyond death. And Tolstoy has his own ideas about the scriptures and Christianity and the like. I'm not a religious person. I'm not a Christian. I'm very interested in Jesus because he's sort of like whoever he was, whoever he is. He's like perfect, and it's like I wish I was more like him, but I never will be. So he has my curiosity. But getting back to Tolstoy, he didn't really see one of his main characters, this Prince Andrei guy's dying for days, and he's gonna die, and you know that, and it's like. It's not the end. It's the beginning. It's like an awakening.
Yep.
Moving on. William Blake, another writer, has this wonderful idea. Like he sees death as nothing more than going from one room into another. I said, Jesus, how do these guys think up those ideas? So I should say, as I'm going along here and blabbing, but there's this standard idea, And it's like a lot of these people will tell you, even a guy like Charles Darwin, original thinker, da-da-da-da-da. Most of these heavies say they sit or stand on the shoulders of giants.
Mm-hmm.
I do too. And what is meant by that is the people who've come before us, there's some very smart, very qualified, very enriched people who write, who think. And as we read them, see them, listen to them, you kind of take in and take on what they have, because your instincts, again, tell you, not only is this good, it's right, it's honest, it's probably accurate. So you kind of take on them, and it gets in your system. And I think this is hugely valuable. I think when you take on good stuff, it becomes part of you. That's who you become. And it's like the fingers on the hot stove. It becomes your instinct because you trust that.
Right.
It's good.
They experience that. They have propelled you forward in taking you from ground zero to ground 1,000 or whatever it is, just because of their experience and how they can portrayed it and how you bought into
absolutely,
it. Yeah.
Absolutely. The world of ideas, I mean, it's loaded. There's a wonderful, it's not mine. And what I wanted to just kind of finish up about, I sit on the shoulders of giants. I borrow from these guys. I don't know if borrow is quite the right word. I absorb them because I like ideas. Anyway, there's a really neat, cool relationship, and this is somebody else's idea totally. And so I should say too, however I come across, I'm not that smart. Like I say, these people mean a lot to me in all kinds of forms, not just literature. It could be movies, especially music, especially wrestling, high quality experience. I'm not the smartest guy in the world, and I'm not perfect, but you know what? I like all this stuff. It's really good. So anyway, I want to get back to this little idea before I forget it.
Okay.
And it goes like this. Small people talk about other people. Medium people think about things. But big people think about ideas. And that sounds like, okay, you're patting yourself on your shoulder. But when you really think about that idea, it works.
Yeah.
And I like it.
I like it
makes
a lot.
sense,
Yeah.
And so ideas are real important to me.
Because if you're not thinking about your own ideas, you're only focusing on other people's ideas.
Absolutely, and I would say too, and to add to that, for me, I'm not that much of an original thinker. So a lot of what I'm saying isn't really me. It's sort of like borrowed and mixed up a little bit and put out maybe in a different form.
And yet, that's how we all move forward and how we advance. Because we take other people's ideas, then other people take our ideas, and we make better things.
Exactly.
Or better thoughts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think the one thing that we all have going for us in this country is, and a lot of what a guy like Henry Thoreau or a couple of my other heroes, they say the exact same thing. And they're big fans of a guy like Thoreau, and I would like to get to one or two of those guys.
Yeah.
We live in a really rich culture. It's not just that we're a powerful and wealthy country. We have so much to offer. We hear this all the time. But what they see is, whether it's a museum, going to a sporting event, being in a sporting event, the ability to travel, the national park system, democracy. I mean, we have so much at our fingertips that we should, maybe focus or spend more time, more of our effort, more of our life, not just enjoying those things or participating in them, but absorbing them. Our culture also has an aspect in it that's so driven by making money and a sense of materialism. And many of these things are just prompted by, the way we are, especially with advertising, some of the things, and young people always get this, they're driven by ideas like sex and drugs and rock and roll, or Nike's most deplorable line, "Just do it." I can't stand that line because I don't think you just do it. So I think
what would your way of, how would you say that other than just do it? What would your advice be in that regard? Or better, what would the Jim Coffin slogan be, I guess, is one way to say it?
Right thought, right action.
Mm.
And I borrow that from someone. Just for example, one of the guys I really respect who said something along those lines. His name is Viktor Frankl.
Mm.
He's a survivor of the Holocaust.
Sure.
He has
Man's Search for Meaning.
Pardon me?
Man's Search for Meaning.
Very good. Very
Yeah.
good. You're on.
Yeah.
Perfect. And this...
One of my favorite books, actually.
Really? Well, there's one idea in that book that just always sticks out to me, and I say it, and I really think it's profound. And it goes about like this. He says, it's not what you expect to get out of life. It's what life expects to get out of you.
Mm.
So I think some of go ahead.
Removing the entitlement.
Entitlement. Oh, boy. That's a big American feature.
That's right.
Yeah, we've gone too far. In fact, I think a lot of America's problem is that it works in the world of excess, the world of expectation, and as you say, entitlement. We've gone too far in everything. It's almost like expecting to make lots of money and expecting to have automatic good life, when I think life, really good life, boils down to the things we have a tendency to overlook. I mean, just think about some of the human qualities, whether it's trust, loyalty, respect, work ethic, and I'm not saying people have thrown that stuff out the window, but we sort of overlook maybe some very important human qualities.
We're almost so preoccupied by so many distractions in life
Absolutely.
that we can't strip away and focus on the core meaning of what life should be.
Absolutely. I mean, you think about our lives, mine included. I mean, everything is so fast.
Mm.
Since I was a boy, I'm going to say not quite 2 times, but the population in the United States has almost doubled since I was a kid, which was quite a while ago. I was born in 1950. So, and things are built up. There's more roads. There's especially more houses. I mean, Maine used to be very rural. It's getting built up. There's one of the arguments is southern Maine is becoming like North Massachusetts. So our lives are changing. It's different. And it's that way worldwide. The population is growing. And no one wants to talk about population anymore. I mean, as a politician, you can't do that because it's like a death blow. But, it's getting to be like there's too many of us.
Mm-hmm.
So I think one argument, too, which I find is a fascinating idea, is people my age, older, a little younger, what we have in common is we have a tendency to view the past as superior to the present.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, when we grow up and how we grew up, especially as kids, it was very different than it is today. Now for kids, it's programs, it's soccer moms. Back then, the big argument was, you had neighborhoods and you had pickup games. You went to the woods and play. Your parents said, I'll see you for dinner. So you go out all afternoon, you come in at dark and you eat dinner. Now, nobody does that. And we think that's superior. And I think the reason it might be superior is because you're much more on your own. As kids, you're self-reliant. You have to make decisions. Just when you have a pickup game of football, someone's got to, it's paper, scissors, rock, who's going to get first choice.
Right.
And what about rules,
Mm-hmm. You make them.
Yeah, all these
create 'em.
decisions, which we don't make anymore because everything's a program.
Mm-hmm.
So I think what still is very important to good life is how you put yourself together. And if you're a parent, it's also going to be really important how you put your children, how you're going to put them together. There's a wonderful line. I don't know who wrote it. I've seen it twice, and I've never seen the author who wrote that. I saw it once on a blackboard outside of a store in Texas. And it goes something like, kids are like Jell-O. You want to put a lot of good stuff in them before they set.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
It is nice. It really works. I also think one should probably think about that about yourself. So one of the ideas that are a small group of ideas that I really like is about character. And my question to you, Rick, is would you prefer character to intelligence? Can character prevent mediocrity? or is character destiny? What do you think?
Yes to all the above.
How so? That's a tough question.
Well, and I think about I'm maybe I'm not answering the question, but I'm going to come up with
You're
this.
going to sidestep it?
I'm not going to sidestep. Well, yes, I am. When I was a wrestler and you were my coach, you were forever encouraging us with literature. On the walls of the wrestling room were, knowledge is power, is one that I remember. And there were books that were recommended to us, and all of us held those in high regard when we got a book recommendation from you. And the one that I was thinking about this coming in, and Herman Hesse.
Oh, yeah.
Narcissus and Goldman.
Oh, yeah.
And, I remember you, I think Nulp, too. Nulp, yeah, was another one, and sort of the traveler man. But I don't know if it's true in all of Hesse's reading or writings because I didn't read all of his works, but in those two particular, there was the character development between these two people, Narcissus and Goldman, and good and evil. And there was a choice. It appeared obvious that there was a choice as to which one of these paths these guys were following. And could they break those? And that just, to me, that was I was comfortable with character and the importance of, positive, good character all through my life. I've had, you mentioned Jesus. He's been my example for character. And when I read that book, I said, yeah, there is a clear path. There are two choices, and I will pick the good path. And so that to me tells me that character, I think it's chosen. I think, you have the opportunity at some point in time in your life, you're going to decide whether it's good or evil. And not only the choices that you make would be good or evil, however, and also it's how you're going to think. What's going to be occupying your brain? Are you headed towards a positive or are you headed towards a negative? And where do you want your thoughts to be aligned? A mindset, sort of. Yeah.
I very much agree with all that. I think choice is key. It's been the subject of many writers. One really good example sticks out to me is East of Eden by John Steinbeck. There's a Chinaman in there. He's sort of like the wise man, and he has this Chinese term. It's called something like Tim Shao. And he comes up with that idea all the time throughout the book, and it's all, thou mayest choose. And I think we have choices all the way along. I think what's, again, getting back to our culture, what happens is a little bit is we have too many choices. It's should I buy the red shirt or the blue shirt? But it gets almost like corny like that instead of, these life questions, I got to be more careful. This is a big moment in my life. It's almost like marrying the wrong person or something, which is getting harder and harder to do or to not do. But go ahead.
Because we've gone from red shirt, white shirt to blue, maroon, maroon. There's 25 different colors to pick from now. We don't have just two. It's not black and white, to use that analogy. So, yes. And, the other thing, too, is you talk about character and consequences. Where are we at with consequences these days? And everything you do has a consequence. It's going to be a good or a bad outcome, whichever choice you make. And, if you're thinking and you're not just moving along, you're going to make better choices, have better consequences, I believe.
Yeah, it's almost like you want to be and you got to be smart. Well, how do you get smart? How do you, again, the idea of wisdom. I think you and I talked once before about some distinctions about wisdom. For example, there's a really nice discussion about the difference between wisdom, knowledge, and information by a guy named T.S. Eliot, a writer, who I usually find kind of hard. But I like this idea. He says there's a real difference between information and knowledge. And information, we have a tendency to think, because I have a smartphone, sort of the wrong name for me. I'm technologically not so good, but our computers and our phones and stuff, they have a ton of information. If I want to look up a vocabulary word, either what it means or how to spell it, it's very good. I like that. And it's quick. But T.S. Eliot will go on to tell you there's a real difference between knowledge and information. Knowledge is, it might be fixing the toaster or changing the battery in your car. But then there's a further distinction. Wisdom is not like knowledge. It's sort of in a league of its own. And what is wisdom? And wisdom, again, it comes back to instinct. It might be a quote that you really like and agree with. So wisdom, in my view, it carries a lot of weight. And I want to get back to a few ideas about...
Hold that thought.
Yep.
We were chatting a little bit about T.S. Eliot, and that prompted a question to me. Is wisdom like a flame that is burning and you can blow it out? Or is it on all the time?
I think it becomes an addiction. For me, literature. Let me interrupt just one quick idea about literature that I really like. This is 20, 30, 40 years ago. I can't remember. I was watching public television. It was the very end of a panel discussion by a group of people that I didn't even know what it was about. But it was like less than a minute left to go in this panel discussion. It was an older woman. I think she was a teacher. Never got her name. She said this line, which to me is so good. It says, "You can't go as far as you can without literature." And pardon my French, I said to that, holy shit. It was so good. I never forget that line. It says it just works. But where were we?
We were talking about wisdom.
So wisdom, I think it's a lot, for me, it's a lot like addiction. And I seek, it's not just wisdom. I seek things like novelty, adventure. I think ideas are real good for that. Literature is real good for that. There's one man who I want to get to who really thinks a sense of adventure can be found just in ideas. These are adventure and ideas. I agree with that. So I find ideas, adventure, novelty, the unknown, the unexpected, qualities like that in literature, travel, good movies, good conversation, good friendship, and many other places. And I want to mention a few ideas about some of those. For example, if you were a kid, it doesn't have to be a kid, but especially in the world of, let's say, pick sports, could be wrestling, could be, especially like football, scoring the winning touchdown. I think what's real important in life and very connected to wisdom and good life and how to live well is dreams. And I'm not talking about the dreams that are kind of incoherent. You forget them when you wake up. I think the dreams when you are awake, especially when you're young. There's this wonderful line by the guy who used to do Peanuts. His name is Charles Schulz. And it goes, it's so simple and it's so good. To dream is to live. I think that's just beautiful. My dad has a line that I think is, and when I say this to people or they read it, and quite often when I throw a bunch of quotes at somebody, this one really sticks out to people. And I think it's apropos to, especially in sports, especially in your life, and in many of your experience. And it goes something like this. If half your dreams come true, you're doing pretty good. Another idea I like about dreams is there's a French mountaineer. His name is Gaston Rebouffet. He's been on some of the big climbs early on. And his idea is, I prefer dreams to memories. And the last idea I really like about dreams, and it really makes me think of something way beyond, is row, row, row your boat gently down the stream, merrily, 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 merrily. Life is but a dream. Holy smokes, do you suppose we're really dead and we're actually just in a dream?
In a dream.
Here, today, now?
Yeah.
Holy Christmas.
Yeah, but that whole thing about dreaming also lends itself towards, being a visionary or just being able to see yourself do things, those are dreams, so to speak. Or you have a dream and you say, yeah, I can be that dream. I can do what that dream is and making it happen.
Well, Rick, you and I were wrestlers. And for myself, my dream in high school was to place fourth. Not be the state champion, not to be runner-up, not to be... I dreamed about placing. You get a state medal to take fourth in the state championships. So maybe you, maybe we dreamed about placing in a tournament. Maybe we had the dream to win a title or something. That never happened for me. But that dream is there, and I understand it. I can see it. I can see when I was a junior or senior in high school with that dream. And even though it didn't come true, I got a lot out of it because I dreamed, I hoped, I saw my weaknesses. I might have thought I had a strength or two, but so it clears things, it clarifies.
Yeah, yeah.
Did you dream about being a champ?
I dreamt about being... So I didn't come from an athletic family. I didn't have an older brother or whatnot that were sports that I was looking up to. I had friends who had older brothers and things, and I looked up to them, and I said, I want to be like them. I didn't know what it meant to be like them. I knew they were successful. My first goal was to be on the wrestling team, and so that was a big goal or a big dream, and I did that. Then it was, okay, what's it going to be like? I want to be good at it, and yeah, I would like to have gone to states, and I didn't. And so what I got out of that was the struggle. My struggle was different. My struggle wasn't to beat the guy in the finals for the state championship. My struggle was to not have made it. And so that has been a constant, not a regret, but a lesson on never giving up. And, that was what I took from wrestling was you never gave up. Most wrestlers never get pinned. Well, I was going to do whatever it took to never get pinned. Regardless of how many double chicken wings I got placed in, I was not going to get pinned. A real lesson learned. And I just can see myself at regionals, Mount Blue High School. I'm down 1 point. And I can remember there was a break or something. I was able, maybe in between periods, and you said, "This is what you got to do to win," and I knew it, and it didn't happen. I didn't make it happen, and not a regret again, but a lesson that when I'm in a tough spot, I know what I have to do to get out of it, and you just got to do it.
Well, that's a really good example of. Kind of along the lines of vulnerability. It's when you're in a sticky situation, you got to make a decision. I want to mention just a short aside about vulnerability. I've watched quite a few of the TED Talks, TEDx, There's one on vulnerability, and that's part of the little title of this woman's spiel, her presentation on vulnerability. Her name is Brené Brown. It's one of those TED Talks that went viral. It's like in the top 10 of all time. And if you get a chance to see it, it's terrific. It's really smart. Wonderful. It's really funny. But what I really like about it was, and I hadn't given it as much thought until I heard her talk about vulnerability. It's when you're in a sticky situation, you got to make some decisions. And again, you're going to rely a lot on your instinct, your wisdom, and hopefully make the correct decision. And so vulnerability shows up all over the place. There's no better place to look at it than in a wrestling match. There is no better place to look at it is when you're with someone very close, and this, whether it's a problem or a possibility, you have to think well. You have to make a good decision. Could be your spouse, your girlfriend, just a good friend. One of the examples that I really like, and my hat is off to, and these examples are absolutely profound. I'm a big fan of having read a lot about our Medal of Honor winners in war. And what really appeals to me is especially young men, some of them 18, 19, 22, 25, 17, who have to make absolutely fast decisions that are life and death, and they make those decisions. Or in some cases, they actually do make a decision, even if they don't act and don't do because, as I might even picture myself, they're scared shitless. I mean, it's like, whoa, I'm not doing that. There's no way. I'll be killed and all my life and blackness done, toast. But so many of them do. They act, and many of them. I think the majority of Medal of Honor winners are killed. I mean, what they do. And I said, talk about vulnerable. I mean, everything is on the line. So, when I read the stories of guys in Korea, World War II, and Vietnam, I said, I mean, it's not really even inspiration. I just said, who were those people?
Yeah.
And I'm saying,
It almost makes you want to have lived that experience because it's just so raw.
Priceless.
Yeah. Totally priceless.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I don't think war is the best place to be checking out vulnerability because I'm pretty anti-war. Unfortunately, it has in lots of times it's been a necessity. But I think vulnerability is key. One of the best places to see it and to live it, I think, in our culture and nowadays is sports, and not to harp forever on sports, but I think sports is hugely valuable to each and every one of us, and particularly Americans. And it's not just USA and the like, but sports I think is far more valuable today than it was 50 years ago, because I think some of the very few things that are going on are just really, really important. For example, sports, they're organized, they're a group. There is a sense of community. We don't get a lot of these feelings and experiences outside of sports, particularly high school, could be college. I'm not a big fan of sports at the professional level. It's not just because money taints professionalism and the like, but something about amateur sports. I think there's a lot to be said for captains of teams, a sense of leadership, coaching, but you can't coach everything. The players, the individuals are on their own. I mean, they got to go for it. They got to make the decisions. I think decision making, problem resolution, there's so much going on in sports. If it's done fairly well, it's actually important. It's important for citizenship, community development, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm a big fan of sports. I don't think I'm really prejudiced to say I think the quintessential sport for me is wrestling. It's not my favorite sport. I played a couple other sports which I think are more enjoyable. But as far as what you get out of it, it's really, really hard to beat. I mean, it's absolutely loaded. I mean, it's not just about winning and losing. It's not just about dieting and controlling your body. It's self-discipline. Dreams,
Vulnerability, the risk, the risk of, I've got to throw, I'm there. Am I going to go for it?
Yeah, I'm down by 5 points.
Yeah.
What are you going to do?
Yeah.
And you're out there, you're all alone. There's a wonderful short story called The Most Dangerous Game, where a guy has to, try to save his own life against someone, one individual is going to kill him. It's a famous old short story, but it's called The Most Dangerous Game. So wrestling's like that. It's one-on-one. You are out there alone. You may have a coach. You may have your teammates hollering for you and stuff like that. But holy smokes, it's a real lonely place. Some people thrive on that. Some don't. Some, it becomes unimportant because you're there to do the job.
Right.
But I think there's so much going on, so many quick decisions, and they're kind of, just for that little circumstance, they're sort of critical. So I think the training and just how you were able to get to that spot through all the hardship, and every time you go out, you can lose. And everyone that's won gold medals in the Olympics, world champ, all those guys have lost. They all understand it all. They're really well put together. But anyway, after dreams and sports, I think the pursuit of what is meaningful, what is worthy, can come in many other places. I think really high-quality friendships are real important. I think high-quality conversation, which I wish I had more of, I think that's real valuable, talking with smart people who are preferably friends who can laugh and they understand you. They don't go too far, but they keep you mindful. I think that's important. I think literature, books, huge, absolutely huge. There's so much there. It's just a loaded direction. But along with that, I had to put a lot of credit into movies. I really think Hollywood, a lot of people can be critical of Hollywood, this and that, and political and all this. But good movies are hard to beat. They bring out strong ideas, emotion, grand experience. I'm going to give you just a clip of a movie, but I'm not going to tell you how it turns out because I want you to go and see it someday on your own. There is a movie from the late 60s. It's called The Sand Pebbles. It stars Steve McQueen. It's in my view, with the exception of the famous police movie called Bullet. If you ever get a chance, you want to see the ultimate police movie. It's called Bullet with Steve McQueen. It's just, trust me, it's just the best. But I think he's actually, if you know this guy, Steve McQueen, you'll say, whew. Anyway, he's in the Sand Pebbles, and he befriends, it's about a American riverboat in Chinese waters, late 20s, 1929, I think, somewhere in that neighborhood. And I won't get going on the movie hardly at all, but I just want to remind you of there's a scene in there which I think is the most, for me, the most profound scene I've ever seen in any movie, ever. And Steve McQueen, as an American sailor, befriends this young Chinaman. They become great friends, and it's all about a boxing match and friendship and mechanics and stuff like that. But he is forced to do something to save this man.
The Chinese man?
Yeah, and it's like what you have to go so far to save your friend, what he has to do in that movie. And I when I see that scene, and I've watched that movie 2 or 3 times, it sounds cliche, but I'm just blown away by what a friend has to do to a friend to save him. So I bring that up because if someone like me is affected by, I'm just passing on. You might not be affected by that little sequence in that movie, but I just shake my head. I can't get over it. It's like, wow. So.
Wow, because of what he had to do to save his friend, you mean?
What he had to do.
The choice he had to make.
The book is a little different. The book doesn't have that scene in it. So someone in Hollywood thought that up. And did they do that to make me think? I mean, it's just profound. I just can't help it. But anyway, what I'm getting at is movies. There's so many great movies. We all have movies that we really enjoy. We talk about, blah, 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 blah. But I think the fact that it makes you think, it makes you appreciate beyond a sense of entertainment, because so much of our life is entertainment. It's like water parks, Disney World, so much on our internets. I mean, the world of screens has taken over a great percentage of our lives, including movie screens and stuff. I think there's some good of it, but I think in another way, you watch out, you don't waste your life. So I think theaters is really good. I had an opportunity, say about a half a dozen years ago. My daughter, Emily, and I, we went, the two of us, we went to London. And we did all the museums. It was loaded. It's really good. But we said near the end of the trip, we said, we gotta go to the theater. I mean, London's famous for the theater. So we ended up, and I won't tell you all about it, but we watched The Lion King. And then we went, just by total luck, and we got a front row seat, but by accident, cheap, to see Hamilton. So big deal, right? But I'll be honest with you, I like The Lion King better than Hamilton. But anyway, there was one thing in Hamilton, one little line that was said that I'll never get over. It was so good. They're going along, and whatever the scenario is, it's not real important. But one of the actors is starting to talk about your children. And he sort of says something like this. He says, well, maybe they'll go away, and when they come back, they're going to be so well put together that they're going to, quote, blow you away. And I said to myself, wow, talk about a dream. I mean, your own kids are going to blow you away, just how well they're put together and what they're on to. And I really like that. It's just like dreamy.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, so In terms of wisdom experience, where do you think humility plays in that? The ability to, be humble, and does that allow us to gain more wisdom, or, does it push us back away from being able to gain in our knowledge? What are your thoughts about that?
I think humility is absolutely key. I think it's one of the great human aspects. It goes with character. Character is kind of a general term, but we sort of know what character means. And I think character or humility is included in the idea of character. No one seems to like, especially if you're young or you're middle school or high school, no one likes someone who's cocky or arrogant, or as you grow older, someone who's know-it-all. So I think humility, and the other thing is, it's like if you never thought you were going to step in dog do, forget it. Right. I mean, you need to be humble because you're not perfect. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to say the wrong thing. You're going to trip when you didn't want to trip. So I think humility is very important. And I think you'll like yourself tons. You'll like yourself tons if you are humble. Yes, absolutely. I put humility, trust, the loyalties, the respect, stuff like that. It's all so good. Very important.
Yeah. One quote that I had just in doing some research: "Who is wise and understanding among you? By his good conduct, let him show his good works in the meekness of wisdom." I love that, meekness of wisdom.
Well, it's almost like wisdom has humility connected to it. It's almost like you have humility / wisdom. You don't want to come on too strong. It reminds me of a Buddhist way. The Buddhists are, they don't necessarily believe in a God, but in a way, and their way is very much to do with humility and peace and quiet, simplicity, basic.
Yeah.
So I agree with that very much. I think it's the way to go. And the thing is, people who are fairly bright or fairly aware, they see that, they recognize it, they have a great appreciation of that, let alone respect. It's almost like, wow, that's the way I want to be. It's like modeling.
Right.
One other idea that I really like, and you can actually hear it and see it in a movie. There's an old version of the movie David Copperfield. And the very end of the movie, David Copperfield himself is walking on a beach with some old ribs from an old ship. It's a sandy beach. There's just been a storm. And the previous day, his two best friends drowned on a shipwreck. So he's having this soliloquy along the beach. He's talking just to himself. There's no one else there. And he's trying to, in his mind, he's trying to sort things out. This disaster is just what happened. And as he slowly builds and said, this, and that, he gets to the following, roughly the following lines. He said, because his friends they had everything going for him. He says, it's not enough, however, to be good looking, to be smart, to be wealthy. What you need in this life is to be strong. So you and I, Rick, it may have already happened, but one thing's for sure, it's coming up. People we're close to, could be family members, could be friends. They're going to pass away. They're going to be killed. So that's one example of being strong. Getting back to wrestling, you're gonna hit some hard times, and wrestling is about strength and about struggle. So that really fits. So much of that is in movies. There's so many things that go wrong, and they're going to continue to go wrong. So I really like those lines. I really like that whole little soliloquy and stuff. You need to be strong. It really fits for me. So again, wisdom is a lot about, and it isn't a thing when you're 12 years old, 15, 18, 22, 25. Wisdom is a lifelong thing, a lifelong pursuit. It's nice when you're young to have models. Tons of kids do. They have a favorite teacher or teachers. They have a coach that they really like. It might be someone on television. It might be a superhero. Most of that, almost all of that, I think is really good. I think it's nice to have models, mentors, guideposts. So I think, if you're a fairly bright kid, girl or boy, growing up, finding out where to find these high quality, whether it's movies, books, etc., I think is real important. I think what we overlook a little bit is what I think is extremely important, maybe even more important than all the things I've said so far, is an awareness, a pursuit, trying to have an understanding of love and beauty. And both love and beauty take on all kinds of different forms. It's not just about, a man and a woman or a girl and a boy or just two friends. It's love. It could be of some things or some way, some experience.
Love of nature.
Yeah, It could be that. And beauty. Beauty takes many forms. It could be a beautiful moving basketball, although basketball's not as good as wrestling.
Right.
But beauty in an expression, in a moment, something that someone does, something that someone says, something that one does for another. It could be a painting. Those are the most common examples. But beauty is widespread, diverse, always ongoing, will never end. It has a sense of infinity, unlike our lives. So I think love and beauty, they're loaded, they're deep, they're forever. And I think a person is really smart would really pursue those two ideas more than anything else, because you're automatically in good shape. I mean, it's good stuff.
Yeah. Well, you're in the inner core at that level. You've allowed yourself to peel some onion layers down.
Yeah, and onion layers. Getting back to wisdom, it seems to me, and wisdom and instinct. The more you come by good ideas, the more you come by good people, examples of beauty, experiences of beauty, good dreams, I think the more of that you take into your system, it almost becomes like flesh and bone. It becomes like a permanent part of your body. It's who you are. You represent that. You smell that. That's the aroma you give off. And I think what it builds on you, it's like addiction again. You don't let it go because you know it's so good. It's so valuable. It's really good life. So I think wisdom over time, the more it's not just about pursuing it. You try to do things that are quality, that add to your well-being, your experience. So in the long run, you actually exude it. It becomes instinctual. You sort of represent it. You live it. You breathe it. You like it. I think it rubs off, hopefully. I mean, other people have their choice about if they want to rub off on them or not. So, instinct. So I have a few other ideas about it. It's a wonderful book called The Little Prince. It's a very short book. Mm-hmm. Most people think it's a kid's book. Yes, it is. But it's way beyond that. It's written by a guy named Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. And if you do a little homework on this guy, he's a guy, he flew. And when World War II came on, even at age 45, he wanted to fly against the enemy. Mm. And on one of his trips, he was lost out to the Mediterranean and never returned. But he wrote a number of books. One is his most famous is the Little Prince. And it reminds me a great deal of wrestling, because it's a lot about difficulty. It's a lot about hope. It's about how to live. But the thing that strikes me the most about it, and I really like this idea, and I've actually had some feedback because I used this idea once in a presentation involving wrestling. A couple of people came up to me afterwards and said how much they like that idea. And the idea, it's not mine. The idea comes directly from a character in the book. That character happens to be a fox. And the fox says twice in that book, the most important things in life are invisible. And when I read that, I said to myself, holy shit. It wasn't just that it was so good, but it's so true. I mean, it's like, you know, you live, you're going to die, you don't have your material things. If you're lucky, you get to say goodbye. So as you live, what really is most valuable to you? And here's part of what I think is really valuable to anyone or everyone. And whether you agree with it or not, I'm not sure. But one of my heroes is a man named Lewis Mumford. I think he died in 1999 or 8, somewhere in there. He was an architect, writer, social critic. He's sort of, you know, he reminds me, there's no flies on this guy. He's just like a perfect man. Very smart. He has this idea about what is important. In my view, if anyone who listens wants to disagree with this, go for it. But I have, of all the things that I've read, I think these 2 sentences that he wrote are perhaps the 2 best and 2 most important sentences ever written. Because I think they're all about how to put yourself together and how to see and what is really important. And it goes like this. The test of maturity for nations as for individuals is not the increase of power, but the increase of self-understanding, self-control, self-direction, and self-transcendence. For in a mature society, man himself, not his machines or organizations, is the chief work of art. And I said, wow, that's so good.
Man is the product.
And when you really think about what America stands for, I mean, we got power, we got armies, we have wealth, we have trade, corporations, schools. But my thinking is, and I really, you know, you can really get down on America because it's got a lot of problems right now. But I think our real power is what we have in our country is we have a tremendous amount. We have thousands. We actually have millions of beautiful people. We really do. We have people, so many people that are so well put together. They're just really good human beings. I think a lot of other countries likewise have a lot of wonderful people. But I think Mumford, I think he's got it. I think
because he talked a lot. Thank you for sharing. You shared that article with me about Mumford, and I read that, and he was really, I mean, he was ahead of his time in so many different ways, and he talked a lot about sort of removing technology. Am I correct?
Not necessarily removing it, but putting it in its place,
perspective,
recognizing that it has value, but let's not be overtaken by it. Let's not be overwhelmed by it. Let's not make it our life.
Right. Exactly right. Yeah. You talk about literature, writing, journaling. You journal, other people journal. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm glad you brought that up. I think the idea of keeping a journal, even if it's kind of fluffy and not that deep, I think it's just an excellent idea. For myself as a younger person, after I started to read a little bit about Henry Thoreau, in particular reading his book Walden, he has 2 giant volumes which are printed up about his journals that he kept. For those of you who don't know a little bit more about Henry Thoreau, he's probably, you know, we got guys like John Muir or Rousseau or, you know, some of the big names out there who did a lot of walking and hiking and wandering. But Henry Thoreau is probably the world's greatest wanderer. I mean, this guy, he just loved to walk. I love to walk too. I find wonderful thoughts just walking along. He kept a journal, and you know, you could be in Florida in January, and you could turn to a page of his journals of October in Massachusetts, and you'd be walking with him in the foliage, you know, picking up acorns and stuff, and it's like, it's good. And you can see why he came by so many of the things that he came by. But there's all kinds of people that write journals. One of my favorites, Leo Tolstoy, he kept a journal for years and years and years. It was a lot about how he interpreted scriptures, but also a lot about self-study, which gets me back to Lewis Mumford. And I've been keeping a journal. I was in the service way back when, not by choice. When I was in college, the Vietnam War was going on, and what happened was...
You were drafted.
Yeah, and what happened was in the Vietnam War, a lot of the people that got drafted are basically put in the Army, not necessarily by choice, and the people who were getting killed were people from low income, quite often people of color. It started to be a problem. So what our government decided to do was they thought people in college and the like could finish college, but it was only going to be a deferment while you were in college. So when you got out of college, you had a responsibility to go in the Army. So that happened to me. When I was a sophomore, they had the first lottery, the first draft, and it said if you were under number 125 or so, you probably would get drafted. That's exactly what happened to me. So in the fall, after I got out of college, I was drafted for Vietnam. Fortunately, by the time I got a basic training, we're shooting M60 machine guns and getting gassed in the tear gas tank, the war was over. But they didn't let you out of the Army. Eventually I was supposed to go to be one on a 9-man mortar crew down in Louisiana, but I got shanghaied. I got taken to be a secretary for the National Guard and Army Reserve. So it was a really easy job. I got a lot of time off, so I started to travel. But one thing that I really did, well, two things that really stuck out was I got to read a lot of the books that I saw all these titles growing up and stuff. Never had the time to read them. So I got to read a ton of great books. They even had a library on the post, and they showed good movies. But more importantly for me was it's when I began to keep a journal, 1973. I've been keeping one since. I read all kinds of things in it. Could be what you do daily. Could be the temperature. A lot of people say, don't be writing that kind of stuff. I don't agree with that. Keep a journal. All the books that I read, if I find a quote or some ideas that I really like, I write down what it is in my journal, what page it came from, who wrote it, stuff like that. I have a ton of stuff that I do in travel. For me, by far and away, if I have one possession in the whole wide world that has high value to me, it's my journals. So I think they can be very valuable. When I read back on them, I sort of snicker a little bit because who was that guy 50 years ago? It's sort of comical. I said, well, he's like Henry Thoreau or something,
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and I journal.
You do?
I've been doing it for probably 6 years now, maybe a few more. But yeah.
So why do you?
To process thoughts, to be enlightened, to step outside, to slow down. I do it in the morning. It's one of the
I usually do it in the
things
morning.
that I
Not
do
always,
in the morning.
But yeah.
And again, just the idea or the ability to process through a thought. And sometimes I'm 2 or 3 days ahead of. I've got something coming up in 2 or 3 days, and I may write about that.
Prep.
Yeah, prep, and if nothing else, just kind of opening up the sieve up there to let things filter through and come in and create other possibilities that open my brain up, I guess. Let the sponge soak it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then other times, I'll process some hard things. This was a challenge, and I did this or I didn't do this. I wish I had done this, and by writing it down, it's a resolve to do it in the future.
Well, journals are awfully good idea. My poor daughter, as I talk to you now, I talk to her like this a lot. So I don't know how tired she is of it, and she closes the door sometimes. But what I have noticed is she spends a lot of time on her journal.
Yeah.
So I tried to convince her that, down the line, it's not really just a record of what you did and this and that. There's more there, more there than you realize as a youngster. And as you grow older, your appreciation of how you lived and decisions and what you came by. And the thing is, I mean, imagine reading all these nice books or seeing all these nice movies and then sort of forgetting about them and not knowing, what was that line? Oh, I wish it was at my fingertips, but you can come by it if you wrote it down and you took some time. Because what's happened to me here today is I'm repeating some of my journal.
Yeah, sure.
So for me, it's been it's a really good resource. I mean, I used to write a lot about wrestling and stuff. I might write about a kid, his experience, or just list how kids do in a tournament, and any ideas that go with all that. So,
yeah.
And you can. I mean, it can be instructional. I mean, because of that experience, and you're going to come by it again or something close to it. If you didn't remember everything, what should I do? You can go back.
Right. Yes. So you've made a statement that I've heard, and it's passed on to my kids, and just like to have you reflect on it. You've said, "Time is a bullet."
Well, yeah. What else do you want to say about that? But
no, just
okay.
You go for it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
your interpretation of time is a bullet and what that means to you and how you see it played out.
Well, time is a bullet. That's actually one of my own thoughts. It's just a thought that came by one day. I said, what a bullet has, you can't see it like time, and it's so fast, which is also just like time, and it also can be very deadly. So it has everything about the bullet is.
And you have your finger on the trigger.
Yeah. And part of me wants to say that's where it ends. But on the other hand, I don't know how to take that little analogy further. But the fact that it was said and it has those things that I just said is good, because it's like one of those lines is it can go on. It can go on. I mean, you can think of it in different ways. And some person might, for example, I might just ask you in 2 seconds here, well, what do you think it means? Because does it mean more than all what I just said? Or, because it could. I think, really smart lines, and I'm not patting myself on the back because I'm just not sure that one's that smart. But, it's like when I said, the woman said, you can't go as far as you can without literature. That's a recurring idea to me. I mean, and universally, it's always correct, and it's always worth repeating to someone who hasn't heard it, because it's to pull someone along to read, and I know that, but it's in my instinct now. So, a line which can provoke or promote or to someone else is valuable. So. Do you think any other thoughts than time is a bullet than what I said? I mean, it's got those built-in time qualities right to it.
Yeah, well, and I will tell you, before you said that, I used to think of time like a freight train. The difference is you can see the freight train. The bullet, you can't see the bullet because of the speed that it travels at. Yeah. And, you can continue to use that and say, okay, yeah, I've got I hold the gun, let's say. I have my finger on the trigger. I have my eye looking through the scope. So I can aim at something on that timeline. I may not hit it, but if I don't aim, I'm going to completely miss.
Absolutely. Automatic.
Yeah. So what are you doing to aim to the extent that you can? And knowing that if you do miss, well, there's a target there that you came across, and let's see where that takes you.
Did it come close?
Yeah.
I met someone that I might have said or written that to, and he said it was his favorite idea. So,
well, and I guess I'll talk about writing and your journaling. I will say, letters that you've written in the past I was a recipient of, I don't know how many letters when I was in school, after high school, maybe during high school. Gee, those were, talk about nuggets. When a letter came in from Jim Coffin, there was a lot of nugget there, a lot of encouragement, and the intent behind it was meaningful.
Well, speaking of letter writing, it's especially because of the internet, but also time going on. Letter writing, it's not phased out completely, but it's certainly really diminished. People don't do much of it anymore. It's so easy to text or email. I still write a small number of letters just before Christmas. I have 4 or 5 people that every year I write a letter
nice.
to. And in your case, back then, letter writing was still a real, it was before, the computers and the internet and all. And I'm sure those letters probably were a reflection of even some of the ideas that we've talked about today. To me, for myself and for a young person or a wrestler on your team, these kind of ideas, they fit. They're good. They're not necessarily mine, but pass them on because it's good stuff, So I can see why a young person could be affected by these giants. I am. And maybe that's part of what parenting or coaching or teaching is all about. I like the analogy of the relay run where you go along and you pass on the baton to the next, or the Olympic torch to the next. That's pretty good.
Yeah. Travel. You've traveled a lot.
Yeah. We got 5 hours.
I'm
just kidding.
Yeah, no, I was going to say.
Just kidding. Yeah, travel. I'm glad you mentioned that, and I'll be brief about it. I won't say a whole lot about.
No, say all you want to say.
Well, I could talk forever and ever and ever about travel.
Because you have traveled.
I've been lucky.
Yeah.
And I still travel hard. Been mostly traveling in the States here in the last number of years, but I have gotten some 5 places in the world. Travel is very educational. It can be challenging. Can be scary. I'm not going to get talking about.
Tell us one story where you were traveling. You got in a bind.
No, I'm just going to talk about going through the roadblocks in Sri Lanka, which Sri Lanka is the teardrop-shaped island, big island off the coast of India. That's about as far east as I went. But anyway, the 2 different cultures there were fighting each other really bad. Killing each other left and right. The Sinhalese and the Tamils. And the Sinhalese had control of the road. And I just remember, because if you were a tourist with a passport, you were good to go. But when you went through this roadblock, there was something about the way the men were armed. They had their crisscross machine gun bandoliers, and the automatic rifles and the grenades, and no one smiled. And you were free to go. But this image of these guys ready to kill, and the 2 guys who were taking us on this tour, who were of the same culture, these guys were scared. Just scared going through. So it was like
they knew what to be afraid of.
Yeah,
almost
it's so
more
like,
so.
Where are we?
Yeah,
different world. So, the one thing I guess just as a quick comment about travel and culture and the like. There's starting to be a lot of criticism about globalization. Originally, it seemed like a good idea to be able to trade everywhere and go everywhere. And there's some good qualities about globalization. But what's starting to show up is that by melting everything down, so it's all about money and trade and this and that, we're starting to lose some of the distinctions that make one culture different than another. Good distinctions. So travel's not quite like it used to be. In some places, of course, you can't travel at all. But so I think there's a little bit of, or it may even be significant loss in our world about watering down culture. So personally, having traveled a lot longer ago, for example, in the 80s or something, I went to the Soviet Union. It wasn't called Russia back then. It was, it was a really serious. It's hard work just to get to visit the Soviet Union back then. And when you have the Cold War and the potential for nuclear bombs and all that and stuff, totally different world. I can remember, and talk about impoverishment in the Soviet Union. I'm not going to get going on travel, I promise. Here's my last quick story. We're driving in a bus. I'm with a bunch of school teachers. That's how we kind of got to go. We're driving down the back road.
You were in the Soviet Union.
Yeah, in the Soviet Union, and we're going to a small city, 600,000, called Yaroslavl, to visit a school. But on the way, this really, really bumpy road on the bus, and we're going by, and every now and then I'm looking out, there's these houses, and they're on a lake shore or a pond or something like that, and there's a hole in the ice. And finally we go by one house, and there's a woman out there chopping with an axe a hole in the ice to do her laundry.
Really?
And, this is in the 80s, and I'm saying, holy smokes.
Wow.
Is it really like this?
Yeah.
It really is,
Mm.
and was. So, yeah, travel is it's loaded. It's so good. And getting back to just as a quick idea about our own country, there's so much. I mean, the National Park Service, it's been touted correctly, I think, especially by Ken Burns, America's Best Idea. I'm real big on those. I'm real big on the wilderness areas. But I also think there's so many good museums and exhibits. When you think about the intelligence that goes into whether it's a placard, a description, you can get bored and you can get museumed out. But for the most part, people who put that together are really bright. And it's taken a lot of time, a lot of effort to get it right. So the volume of high-quality ideas that are there offered, whether it's in our parks, including the state parks, all the way across the country, especially down in places like Washington, D.C., where there's so much to see and do. But all across the country, the museums, Western art, the ideas of myth and legend and stuff. Oh, so good and very provocative. I mean, really smart and make you think. What I like is it makes the wheels turn. I love that stuff. So travel is just, it's really good. You can run into some trouble here and there, and I've seen a little bit of that. But it kind of brings me along the lines of another idea that I like a lot. And this is by an older man. Just a little description of how this guy got to be a little bit more known was, I'm trying to think of his time. This is back in 1960s. Anyway, there was a newspaper reporter in Boston. His name was Lucian Price. He knew that this professor at Harvard who had retired was just, he's like one of the last guys in the whole wide world that knew about everything. And this guy was retired. He's British, but he taught for years at Harvard. He's living in Cambridge with his wife, retired. So this guy, Lucian Price, says, he kind of sneaks his way and calls this guy up and says, how would it be if I came over after dinner? Maybe we could have tea or coffee, and I bring a tape recorder and I ask you a few questions and you were able to just talk. And the man's name, Alfred North Whitehead, says, sure. So Lucian Price goes, and he actually, when he gets all done, he puts a book together called The Dialogues of Alfred North Whitehead. Can you imagine this? I am reading one of these dialogues when Lucian Price is asking him some questions, and this Alfred North Whitehead is going on, and he says the following, and I'm going to leave one word blank. The meaning of life is, and you can imagine someone like me who read that, actually when I was probably about 21 in an English course, because that particular dialogue was in what we were reading. Can you imagine coming by what you've been looking for your whole life for the meaning of life?
There it is right there. It's about to be in black and white.
Yep, yeah. There it was. And I'm getting to it.
Yeah.
And I think I might even tell you what that word is rather than leave you out on a limb. But before I do that, there's a collection of what's called the Great Courses. They come out of Virginia. They have courses in all kinds of stuff: history, religion, physics, travel, languages, how to sing, how to cook, how to photograph, tons. I've been through a lot of them. Most of them are good. A small number of them they're great. Some of them
snoozers. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's one on the meaning of life. So that's for me. You can imagine.
Yeah.
So it's done by a professor. I don't remember his name. It's out of Connecticut College. It's probably either 24 or 36 lectures, half hour each. The first thing he says is there's all kinds of meanings of life. And when he ends in his final summation, he says the same thing. There's all kinds of meanings of life. And I kind of agree with him. And his whole presentation was high level, smart. However, getting back to Alfred North Whitehead, I'm with him. He says the meaning of life is adventure. I said, holy shamoly.
I'm in.
Yeah, you got me.
Mm.
So I think travel, for example, really fits the bill. Alfred North Whitehead himself would say later, there's an adventure of ideas.
Mm.
I could think about a woman about to give birth to her first child.
Mm.
I could think about a 7th grader stepping out on a wrestling mat for his first match. I could think about that Medal of Honor winner who's got to decide when that grenade comes in to the foxhole and he's with 2 of his buddies and it's going to blow up. Tick-tock, tick-tock, tick-tock. So he's got 3 seconds to decide what to do.
What's his adventure? Huge.
So what are the qualities of adventure? My quick take on that is it's something that is unknown. It's something that could be unexpected. And it's something that's new, a novel experience idea, something like that. So I find the idea of adventure very appealing. It's not something you want to take your life, but if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger and better and all that. Well, sometimes I wonder about that. You're going to say?
I was just going to say adventure begins every morning you wake up. What is today's adventure?
Today is the first day of the rest of your life.
Exactly right.
People
My alarm went off this morning, and my body awakens, and I'm like, okay, today's adventure is I get to podcast with Jim Coffin. Let's go.
Well, let me think about that. I should have a comeback on that one.
Yeah. So, other thoughts? Anything that you haven't had a chance to express? What else?
I was looking forward to this opportunity because I think there's a lot of good ideas, and as I try to put forth at the beginning, most of them aren't my own. But if anyone were to listen to this and you found an idea or 2 that you really liked and you said, it's really good. I think what's happening, and not to sound negative or cynical, which is really easy to do nowadays, especially in our country. We have a lot of problems. These are serious problems. They're not getting fixed. There's a guy whom I really like. He calls a spade a spade. His name is Andrew Basovich. He looks a lot at the political and government view of America. I think he's a real valuable American. He's one of the few people who's really being honest, and he tries to put forth solutions and ways we could do better. And one of his ideas is that since the Berlin Wall went down 1989, he said America was on top. We were loaded. We had everything going for us. We'd have to deal with the Soviet Union and Cold War anymore. But his idea is, which is sad to say, is we blew it. We had a chance to be king of the world in the best kind of ways, and we squandered it. We did a couple foolish wars. His idea about terrorism and the like is it should have been a policing action, not a war. And it's not just a criticism about government. And I don't think government's the real problem. I think human nature is the real problem.
Government is made up of humans.
Yeah. I think we really live right now politically, and I'm not interested in talking about it. It's kind of a dysfunctional democracy right now. And I think what's happened to us, the 21st century, a lot of people looking forward to something that was fresh, a new start maybe. But I think what's happened especially is wealth has kind of overwhelmed common wealth. And I also think some of the ways to look at the world from one of our, in my view, he wrote a couple of the truly great books, which kind of a little bit forgotten now, but they made movies out of them. One is One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and the other one is Sometimes a Great Notion. They were written by a guy named Ken Kesey, who passed away recently. But he looks at ourselves and our circumstances. He has a term that he uses. It's called the combine. It's a combination of all kinds of things that can weight you down. If I was going to talk, especially to a young person, but not exclusively, what I see happening is in the last 10, 20, 30 or more years, the human experience, particularly in America, is getting watered down. I think there's a real dilution of human experience. And I think you almost have to look smarter, either work harder, trust in ideas like character and the like, in order to find what we originally started talking about, or I started talking about. It's not just about wisdom, but how to live really well, and also the people around you. Because if you don't want to miss out. It's like Henry Thoreau. I don't want to, when I come to die, I don't want to think I haven't lived. Mm-hmm. So I want to live to the fullest. And how do you live to the fullest? Well, one thing I could say really quick is just a general statement. It ain't money. Mm-hmm. Money, I have to make money. I like making money. I need to make money. We all do, because that's the way we live. So that's in place. But beyond that, it's like I sort of get the impression from podcasts by the Bissons, they're interested in what else? They're interested in how to live well and how to think well and how to have enriched life, not watered down life. I'd like to think everybody's interested in that. Not everyone is, and you can't necessarily convince everyone to think that way. But I'm a big fan of everyone finding good life on their own terms. And wisdom, ideas, literature, adventure, and very importantly, how to put yourself together. And I Lewis Mumford, those two sentences, mm-hmm. I think they're invaluable. Mm-hmm. And young people don't. I gave those sentences to a relative of mine, a boy, and he said, "I don't understand." I get it. You got to be a little older, okay? Yeah. Yep. So,
Hopefully that means he admitted he didn't understand it, and now he's going to chew on it.
Well, I hope so. And if he doesn't chew on it, I'm going to remind him. Because I'll see him again and all. So anyway, at least for now, I'm not sure what else to say or any.
Oh, I think that's a good place for us to maybe take a break right now, and until the next time. I would say, though, that, something that you said today really rang true. There's a lot of people that I want to be on the shoulders of, that I am looking at and saying, that I've gained from them. And your shoulders are giant shoulders that I and many other people have learned a great deal from and have a lot of respect for. And I'm really happy to be able to share that and have them listen. And there was one more. You talked about love, and one of your previous wrestlers, love, laugh, fight, win and lose, take the chance, see the world. You taught us to experience life. Well done, Jim.
Well, I'll leave you with one parting thought connected to that as well, and connected what you just finalized. There's a writer named Thomas Wolfe. It comes from the book Look Homeward, Angel. I've tweaked it just a little bit, but basically what he's saying is the longest, and the best journey you will ever take is that within yourself.
Perfect. Thanks, Jim.
Welcome.
All right.